Yeah, so this is just, I thought this was a really good picture for the circulation. So you see on let's see, the left side of the picture, that's the pulmonary circulation. And I like how it's blue to show that it's deoxygenated blood. So when the blood is coming back from the body tissues, it's deoxygenated, and then when the heart pumps the blood to the lungs, it gets oxygenated, and then that's why the right side is red to show that it's oxygenated blood, and then the, the heart will send the blood back to the body tissues to distribute the oxygen and other gases. So I'll go more in depth into that. So I just typed out this this like map for the circulation of the blood. You're gonna have to memorize this, but yeah. So I started off this map at the superior and inferior vena cava. So those are the vessels sending the blood back to the heart on the right side. So deoxygenated blood comes back from the rest of your body and enters the right atria via the superior and inferior vena cava. And so the superior vena cava brings all the blood from your body above the heart, and then the inferior vena cava transports all the bloods from below your heart to the right atrium. So so the right atrium, it'll pass through the fill up, and then once it's filled up, it'll pass through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricles. And then the right ventricle will push the blood through the pulmonary valve and send it to the lungs via the pulmonary arteries. So at the lungs, the blood from the heart, it'll exchange gas and waste with the capillaries lining the capillaries will exchange gas and waste with the alveoli. So the CO2 that the blood picked up from the rest of your body will exit out your body through the lungs, and then the oxygen that you breathe in will go from the lungs into the blood. So there's like a concentration gradient where the blood is pretty high in carbon dioxide when it travels from the heart to the lungs, and then the lungs will have a higher concentration of oxygen than the blood. So it'll exchange the carbon dioxide and the oxygen. And then once the blood is oxygenated at the lungs, it'll exit the lungs via the pulmonary venules, and then those will condense into pulmonary veins, and then it'll enter the left atrium. And then once it's filled, it'll go from the left atrium to the left ventricle through the mitral valve, and then from the left ventricle to the aorta via the aortic valve. And then the aorta will divide into smaller arteries and then even smaller arterioles. And once it reaches capillaries, the gas and the nutrients will be exchanged from the blood to the interstitium at the rest of your body. So this is where the oxygen leaves your blood, and the carbon dioxide that the tissue and the muscle created will enter the blood as bicarbonate. And then the cycle starts all over again. So the capillaries will combine into venules, and then into veins that are larger, and finally they'll all empty into the right side of the heart via the superior and inferior vena cava. Sorry, so that was a lot. So this is just a circulation of the blood. It just keeps repeating over and over again via each heartbeat. Any questions on that? Sorry, that was like a lot.
How did you remember this? Did you have like a jingle? Were you just like flashcards? You just look at like the diagram of the heart and kind of just kept going over and over? Like,
For me, I think it's good to draw a diagram. So like I would
okay.
look at this diagram. So like I've studied this diagram and other ones so much that like it's just like embedded in my head now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
But I always like to start it. So I would start it like this, and start it where I started here, from deoxygenated blood entering the right side of the heart through the inferior and superior vena cava. I think that's how most textbooks start it, and I think that's like the most helpful. So like you separate the two different sides of the heart into the pulmonary and systemic circulation. Yeah, so I would try like practice drawing the diagrams out, tracing the path that the blood goes through, and just keep doing that. And then there are like small tips and tricks, but I don't think there's one that like covers the whole circulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a good question. Hopefully I helped with that.
Yes, it did. And then well, Opal has kind of the same question I was just getting ready to ask. You said pulmonary, and then systemic. Systemic is the one that kind of goes through the body first, and then pulmonary is the one that goes to the lungs, right?
Yeah, so so I'm gonna actually go over the next, but yeah, the pulmonary, it goes to the lungs, which is easy to remember, pulmonary lungs, and then systemic, you can kind of remember as like it goes to the rest of the system, so everywhere
body systems,
except the lungs. Yep. So I believe that's the next slide. Yep. So so the two halves of the heart, they're separated into two different circulations. So they're both each side acts as a pump, but both pumps send the blood to different parts of the body. So the pulmonary circulation, which is the right side of the heart, it takes the deoxygenated blood returning from the rest of the body, and it moves it through the right atria and the right ventricle to the lungs via the pulmonary arteries. So the pulmonary circulation, it takes deoxygenated blood and sends it to the lungs to be oxygenated. And then the systemic circulation, which is the left side of the heart, it'll take the oxygenated blood from the lungs and send it through the pulmonary vein to the rest of your body to distribute all the oxygen and other gases. So it sends it from the left atria and the left ventricle through the aorta. Oh wait, yeah. So sorry, I don't know if I said this wrong, but so the left side of the heart system, the systemic circulation, it receives the blood from the lungs via the pulmonary veins and sends it out through the aorta. Any questions on that? And then this diagram is pretty good too. It also labels it red as the oxygen-rich blood and the blue as the oxygen-poor blood. So I would try to study these as like two different circulations. And then once you're comfortable with each one separately, you can combine them together to get the whole circulation of the body.